You certainly forget your condition, Kitty, said the old princess, hurriedly coming out at the door. You mustn't shout like that. Varenka, hearing Kitty's voice and her mother's reprimand, went with light, rapid steps up to Kitty. The rapidity of her movement, her flushed and eager face, everything betrayed that something out of the common was going on in her. Kitty knew what this was, and had been watching her intently. She called Varenka at that moment merely in order mentally to give her a blessing for the important event which, as Kitty fancied, was bound to come to pass that day after dinner in the wood. Varenka, I should be very happy if a certain something were to happen, she whispered as she kissed her. And are you coming with us? Varenka said to Levin in confusion, pretending not to have heard what had been said. I am coming, but only as far as the threshing floor, and there I shall stop. Why, what do you want there? Said Kitty. I must go to have a look at the new wagons, and to check the invoice, said Levin, and where will you be? On the terrace. Chapter 2. On the terrace were assembled all the ladies of the party. They always liked sitting there after dinner, and that day they had work to do there too. Besides the sewing and knitting of baby clothes, with which all of them were busy, that afternoon jam was being made on the terrace by a method new to Agafia Mihalovna, without the addition of water. Kitty had introduced this new method, which had been in use in her home. Agafia Mihalovna, to whom the task of jam making had always been entrusted, considering that what had been done in the Levin household could not be amiss, had nevertheless put water with the strawberries, maintaining that the jam could not be made without it. She had been caught in the act, and was now making jam before everyone, and it was to be proved to her conclusively that jam could be very well made without water. Agafia Mihalovna, her face heated and angry, her hair untidy, and her thin arms bare to the elbows, was turning the preserving pan over the charcoal stove, looking darkly at the raspberries and devoutly hoping they would stick and not cook properly. The princess, conscious that Agafia Mihalovna's wrath must be chiefly directed against her, as the person responsible for the raspberry jam making, tried to appear to be absorbed in other things and not interested in the jam, talked of other matters, but cast stealthy glances in the direction of the stove. I always buy my maid's dresses myself, of some cheap material, the princess said, continuing the previous conversation. Isn't it time to skim it, my dear? She added, addressing Agafia Mihalovna. There's not the slightest need for you to do it, and it's hot for you, she said, stopping Kitty. I'll do it, said Dolly, and getting up, she carefully passed the spoon over the frothing sugar, and from time to time shook off the clinging jam from the spoon by knocking it on a plate that was covered with yellow-red scum and blood-colored syrup. How they'll enjoy this at tea time. She thought of her children, remembering how she herself as a child had wondered how it was the grown-up people did not eat what was best of all, the scum of the jam. Stiva says it's much better to give money. Dolly took up meanwhile the weighty subject under discussion, what presents should be made to servants. But money's out of the question, the princess and Kitty exclaimed with one voice. They appreciate a present well. Last year, for instance, I bought our Matrona Semyonovna, not a poplin, but something of that sort, said the princess. I remember she was wearing it on your name day. A charming pattern, so simple and refined. I should have liked it myself, if she hadn't had it. Something like Varenka's. So pretty and inexpensive. Well, now I think it's done, said Dolly, dropping the syrup from the spoon. When it sets as it drops, it's ready. Cook it a little longer, Agafia Mihalovna. The flies, said Agafia Mihalovna angrily. It'll be just the same, she added. Ah! How sweet it is! Don't frighten it, Kitty said suddenly, looking at a sparrow that had settled on the step and was pecking at the center of a raspberry. Yes, but you keep a little further from the stove, said her mother. _ Apropos de Varenka _ said Kitty, speaking in French, as they had been doing all the while, so that Agafia Mihalovna should not understand them. You know, Mama, I somehow expect things to be settled today. You know what I mean. How splendid it would be. But what a famous matchmaker she is, said Dolly. How carefully and cleverly she throws them together. No, tell me, Mama, what do you think? Why, what is one to think? He meant Sergei Ivanovich, might at any time have been a match for anyone in Russia. Now, of course, he's not quite a young man, still I know ever so many girls would be glad to marry him even now. She's a very nice girl, but he might. Oh, no, Mama, do understand why, for him and for her too, nothing better could be imagined. In the first place, she's charming, said Kitty, crooking one of her fingers. He thinks her very attractive, that's certain, assented Dolly. Then he occupies such a position in society that he has no need to look for either fortune or position in his wife. All he needs is a good, sweet wife, a restful one. Well, with her he would certainly be restful, Dolly assented. Thirdly, that she should love him. And so it is, it would be so splendid. I look forward to seeing them coming out of the forest and everything settled. I shall see at once by their eyes. I should be so delighted. What do you think, Dolly? But don't excite yourself. It's not at all the thing for you to be excited, said her mother. Oh, I'm not excited, Mama. I fancy he will make her an offer today. Ah, that's so strange, how and when a man makes an offer. There is a sort of barrier, and all at once it's broken down, said Dolly, smiling pensively and recalling her past with Stepan Arkadyevitch.